adopt the city.
Do they feel, do they
Eric,
realize that? I
Can
mean,
you go on
is
your
that
Facebook,
true?
make sure I'm
some do.
screening.
Rosemary
it'll
Wilson's
come
up
up.
for re-election, she doesn't care.
It'll come up.
Okay.
Why is she so insistent then?
And all I know is,
Okay.
if people turn out,
You ready?
well, good evening, all my fellow beach residents. And I'm sure most of you were out there industriously working to earn to pay your taxes and to put food on the table and pay your bills this afternoon at 3:30 when the city's director of the budget presented the city manager's recommended budget. But before I get to that, I would just like to read an email that I received during the council meeting, which I really think sets the stage for what I'm going to share with you. And it was from, I'll just say, my husband and I have lived in Virginia Beach since our marriage in 1981. We bought our first home in 1984 and our second home in 1989. Jim was a city employee for 39 years and 1 month, while I continued to work for the state. If you pass the city manager's proposed real estate tax increase of 10 cents to $1.0117, we may need to seriously consider leaving a city we love. The tax increase in an environment of the city having a surplus and a nation with increasing inflation feels very much out of touch with reality and our family budget. As government employees, Jim and I accepted there would be years with minimal or no pay increases. We bought a home we could afford, we paid it off, and have continued to renovate and improve our property over the past 3+ decades. We participated in local activities, our son's schools, scouts, swim team, lacrosse, as well as maintaining an active presence in our local civic league. We are active in our local Virginia Beach church, and we vote in every election. City manager's real estate tax increase, which is that 10 cents plus, and adopt the budget neutral approach recommended by Councilman Moss. Thank you, Donna and Jim. Well, I think Donna and Jim really summed it up nicely, and I have received scores of emails just like theirs, some telling stories of much more tragic implications, especially seniors, on how they are already dipping into their savings just to meet ends meet. And one of them specifically said $400 a month because they just couldn't see how they could live on any less. So I think that the budget we heard today had a theme of how we are restoring and making the city as a financial entity whole, but at the expense of making a bigger financial hole in families' budgets. Specifically, the increase is going from 0.9887, which is the current tax rate, to $1.01 and some change. But the revenue neutral rate is 91 cents. And so that just tells you the city manager is wanting to spend an additional $70 million plus of real estate tax revenues, while also acknowledging they have overperformance revenues of $45.8 million. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how many families are having overperformance revenues, or how many small businesses are having overperformance revenues. And I don't know how many families have the equivalent of a $5 million reserve in their family budget to pay increased fuel costs and energy costs. But this budget has a $5 million reserve for that purpose. It's I don't know how you can say insensitive to where families are today. Now, I don't blame the city manager for the budget he recommended, because city council failed, though frequently petitioned, to adopt upfront and vote on budget guidance to the manager. So the city manager was left to what I call the less than fully transparent conversations of what people want to spend money on council, to the manager in individual conversations, and he's having to get his Ouija board out and guess where those 6 votes are. But where apparently 6 votes were, was a huge increase in spending over 6% gross, and that's not in alignment with what I'm hearing from my beach constituents from around the city or the emails that the council is receiving. So I'm hoping, and hope I know is not a strategy, that all the citizens engaging council, they'll realize that whatever those conversations and earmarks and special spending they want to pursue are not affordable. We're not interested in being taxed to restore holes or make whole against the economy, the city as an entity separate from us, when the citizens themselves aren't being kept whole and they're being taxed to fill that hole. That is not right. That is not sharing the sacrifice. That is not leadership. It's a failure to recognize what's needed. So, to me, I'm starting at 91 cents, and I'm going to figure out how to get down from 1.17 down to 91. I think it's doable. I asked questions tonight, well, where is that $45 million out of overperformance revenue? And of course, that's at the end for the ending fund balance. And I also asked, why aren't the schools in the cities under executing this year? January 18th, the city council, which I was not able to vote on, but spoke my piece before I knew I couldn't, gave back $54.9 million of surplus money from last year to the school. That decision needs to be revisited. And at a minimum, the $3.5 million appropriated back for AstroTurf on high schools, on 2 high schools, definitely can be recovered. So I think if we make the kind of common sense decisions and priorities that families make at home, and what did Governor Youngkin tell us? That government must reduce the expense of government, has to reduce taxes on families. Governor Youngkin was right. We are out of balance between the public sector local spending and the private sector who generates the revenue. And we've got to restore that balance, and we've got to get to 91 cents. And if we work as hard as we work on raising money from the people, and work just as hard to reduce the demand from the money we need from people, I think we can get there. Well, there'll be some things that people might not like, probably, but we do things at home that we don't like, because we don't get to accelerate a bunch of school construction once a year, which they want to do. What material benefit, how much of a gain in academic performance do we get by accelerating the construction of a school by a year? I would suggest none. But it takes a lot of pressure off our budget when you don't accelerate, but it puts a lot of pressure on debt service and other things when you do. And the cities are asking money for an accounting system for payroll. If you wait an next year, does no one not get paid? They probably still get paid. It'd be nice to do, but it's not a need, it's a want. We need to remove all the wants from the budget. Yes, we have some parks that can be renovated. People have homes that can be renovated. They have homes that need maintenance. They probably need HVAC system. I was going door to door, met a family that was heating only the rooms they were occupied because they couldn't afford to replace their heating system. And I know that's not an isolated story. And yet, we're putting this up at the top of the priority to renovate other things that could wait. We're not setting priorities that we should be if we're looking at what people are facing. And council has to take into consideration that we haven't seen the worst of what inflation is going to deliver during this next budget. During this next budget year that starts July 1st, that's about the time you're going to be seeing these food price increases. And you can go to any investment house, you can go to any of these people who look at this stuff, agriculture, and we're looking at 20 to 25% increase in food prices across the board, because I thought back the other day that fertilizer was over $800 a ton. It's now over $1,000 for fertilizer. So those prices are coming. So we need to be looking forward to what families are going to be incurring. Energy bill increases, all those things, and they don't have the equivalent of a $5 million reserve. We have got to pare this thing down. It isn't going to make everybody happy, and we might might get service not as good, but you gotta ask yourself, if you can't pay your bills, you can't buy food, what service would you cut out of your home budget? You'd take some risk. And council just needs to find out what those risks are, but how they're gonna know that is that people like Donna and Jim, there's hundreds of thousands of Donna and Jims out there. You all need to write to city council at vbgov.com. That's city council at vbgov.com and tell them that they need to deliver a 91-cent neutral real estate tax rate and show why they can't. I believe it can be done. Not with, and in the end, if we can't get all the bond referendum, maybe there might be some slight, but we are far from referendum. We've got 45.4 or $8 million in overperformance revenues, and plus we haven't even seen what the impact of the state revenue budget is going to be and how that might help us out. In the schools, we need to, if we just went and recovered that $54.9 million, or a good portion of it, there's the bond referendum right there. You need 28 million bucks. Half of that amount, we could solve the bond referendum just like that. And the schools are not, they don't need to accelerate all that school construction. They don't need to buy turf fields. There's money there. It's just hard. I don't even call those hard choices. I wish my family budget had such easy choices to make. Those are easy choices. But they're not choosing to restore and keep families whole. Instead, they're adding to the financial stress. And in the back of the report, they talk about this tax increase is only $31 more a month for the average family. Well, if it's so little money, then they should be able to find it. But even that's not real, and I talked about that too. But anyway, it's very introspective, and no one in that whole budget process, or in the letter, or in the briefing, assesses and talks about the financial pressures that are on families. The cost of child care if they can find it. Their house insurance is going up because their houses are skyrocketing, so they got that cost. All these things, so you add up their fuel bill going up, you add up this, they're out of pocket probably $6,000 to $7,000, and their income didn't go up. And so the city says, well, we asked you for $31 more a month. Well, $31 a month is a big deal. Managing their pennies, and especially seniors. Tax relief we did in the past, but most of that tax relief went to businesses and people in the bottom 20%. So if you were not poor enough and not rich enough, that's the middle 60%, you didn't get any of that. You didn't see any of that money. So when they say tax relief and all these things, the people in the middle, that middle 60%, didn't see a dime of that, not a dime. And they're the people that are hurting. And we should be out there as a council delivering relief that, in conjunction with the relief the governor's trying to deliver, might just keep people in the game, might just keep them in their home, might just allow them to pay to get to work and not have to make too difficult of choices. But they're still going to be facing some tough choices. The future looking ahead is not good on the fuel front and getting any relief, but the energy from the food is where people are going to be hit in the gut. People spend more money on food than they spend on fuel. You hit people with a 25% increase in their groceries, something's going to give. Someone's going to be going hungry. That shouldn't be a budget that we adopt that puts people in a position where they have to choose how much they can eat. That's just wrong. Well, I could go on with this budget, but I'm not trying to but the bottom line is we don't need an 11% increase in the real estate tax rate over the neutral rate of 91 cents. The neutral rate is achievable. The council has to do the heavy lifting, but for them to do the heavy lifting, we the voters have to provide the heavy motivation. You can't communicate robustly enough, frequently enough, or intensely enough. And when the public hearings come, you need to register and speak up. You're going to be able to speak even remotely. You don't have to come in person. You can be right there, at the kitchen table and not see the bottom half, and then say your piece. And in fact, it's all right now. It's just audio. But you can tell them, but don't tell them about all the details of the budget. Tell them what it translates to you, like Donna and Jim did. You want to tell the personal story about what you're facing, and the choices you're having to make, and all you're asking the city to do is not make your life worse and not raise your taxes.
John, could you take just a few seconds to explain? Most people got their new real estate assessments. I don't think most people understand that is the rate they were taxed on the previous assessment. If they go with the proposed increase, is not just going to be an increase because their home value went up, it's going to be at an increased rate. I know that's basic, but just because people got their assessments, they may think they can figure out what their taxes are going to be, but they're proposed to go up far more than just that assessment value.
If your home, and I'm just going to use an example, if your home was say, I'm going to say $100,000 before last year, the current year you're paying taxes, you paid $988.70 was your taxes. If your house goes up to this dollar, goes up to $150,000, and I've heard many people get $50,000 assessment, some even more than that. Don't say your house was now worth $150,000. Well, first on that first $100,000 on the city managers, you're now paying $1,000 and $10 and I think it's 13 cents. Doing math in public is always dangerous, but I think that's correct. But now you also pay that 1.103 on that $50,000 of increased value. So now you're talking about another $505 and around up 7 cents. So your tax bill is going to go up. The part that you got on that first 100,000 and then this 50. So that's your total tax increase. So it will. So that's when you, and then some neighborhoods, in my District 9, these condos went up 34.5%. In District 9, 46% of all the taxable parcels went up over the residential average of 11.29. I hear 15%, 18% is the range quite often, but there are quite a few that were up over 20%. So when you talk about increasing the tax rate 11.1%, and then you talk about how much your assessment went up, you're talking about a material increase. And wealth of your house is not an indication of your income or your ability to pay. It's a wealth tax. And what's driving it up is the same thing that drove up car prices. Shortage of inventory, low interest rates. So the city council acknowledged, thankfully, that it was no way they could harvest 40%, that 25% increase. Well, why are we harvesting a like increase in home values? The city back in November said they were going to be building their budget on a 3.9-cent increase in real estate, taxable property. Well, they got 9.3. So why did they decide to spend the other 5.4 cents, something like that? No, why would we automatically give that back, just like we did with the car tax? That's why I'm saying, with good discipline and making hard choices, getting to 91 cents is not that hard. It's just that you can't restore everything for the city at the expense of creating additional financial holes for residents. The people who own the government, the people that we're supposed to serve, we're making them worse off so the city can be held relatively harmless. And that was a word that was used by the budget director. You have to watch it for yourself. And you have to sit there and say, are you at the Emerald City and everybody else out here is outside the walls of the castle in the slums, like Brazil or something? But we really need to get there, and the council can do it. The question is, they're going to need you. I'm going to close with this once again. The citizens are the ones that can motivate the council to do what is right. And what is right by the residents, and what is the only realistic answer is to get to 91 cents. And then you have to decide, when you look at their job performance, what's the biggest thing that council does? the budget, because council through the coercive power of government can confiscate your revenue. So you gotta ask yourself, if they can't get to 91 cents, do you want these people going back and continuing to be able to confiscate your revenue? Again, write them at citycouncil@gbgov.com and tell them 91 cents, and do sign up for the public hearings. There'll be two of them. Dates is getting off the top, I have them here somewhere in front of me. I think one of them's April 20th, and one, I don't think it's in the executive summary. It's in a little briefing that I have here. Oh, it's right here in front of me.
April 20th at the Convention Center, 6 p.m.
Hear that?
One of them.
At the convention center, and then on May,
Isn't that coming up?
on April 26th,
Coming up.
there is a public hearing at City Hall. That's the public hearing they have to have by state law
What
because
is it?
the real estate tax increase
Scandals guest.
that they
That's
wanna-
right.
has to be advertised 10 days in advance of the vote, not less than 10 days in advance.
not
And the
coming
budget
up.
will be adopted on May 10th. So you can speak April 20th at the convention center. You'll also be able to speak remotely by audio on April the 26th at City Hall, or also by audio. And then
Damn
on
it.
May 10th, you'll be able to speak as the council votes on the budget, because probably at that point it will be difficult to get changes, but you'll be able to do, if you call the city clerk
Maybe I should
at
go reset it.
385-4303, city clerk at 385-4303,
And yours is supposed- it
you
should be
will be
connected to
able to
Yeah, I know.
sign up, and you can let them know if you want to
I
sign
had
up
to go
in
on my
person,
hotspot.
or if you want to speak remotely. And like I said before, tell your personal story. You are not alone. You are not alone. There are hundreds of thousands of households in Richmond Beach,
What do you think?
and most of them are under financial stress. This budget does nothing as recommended but add to that stress.
You'll reset it.
And you should
Okay.
find that unacceptable,
appreciate it.
and you should speak up. Thank you, I'll be doing more of these casts, I do some more homework. I just got the budget today, this afternoon for the first time. I haven't had a chance to get the detail, but I'll be looking to show how 91 cents is possible.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Moss, will you take questions now?
Sure.
Okay. The food at home that you had mentioned, the current numbers, current now, and we know what's coming down the road, is an increase of 8.6%. Energy is 25.6, electricity up 9, gas service for gas at your home is up 23.8. Gasoline's up 38%. Now you had mentioned before with all the food products that are coming down the line, they've just started now. So what are your taxpayers going to expect increases in the coming, especially after July 1 when the budget goes into effect? How will you be able to adjust that for the taxpayers?
Well, like I said, council isn't going to be able to set, doesn't have anything it can do that will affect food prices. All we can change and control is what risk we take with the city, what sacrifices we make, if you want to call them that, on the city side, to minimize creating additional sacrifice choices on the part of taxpayers. Now, what we do, turning back money will help. It isn't gonna close a gap of a 25% increase in food prices. But between the governor, if he's successful in getting the tax off food, there's 2.5%, he eats up some of that with some litigation. If he gets his standard deduction, that's also a relief. If he gets his $300 per person and $600 per couple joint filing, one-time cash rebate, all those things add up. No one level of government is going to be able to offset all the economic forces. Rents were up 18% on apartments, January over January. Can the council? No. But we can mitigate, and more importantly, we cannot add. When you take out $70 million just real estate taxes out of the economy, you multiply that by 1.8, the multiplier effect, you're
Camera
taking out
picked,
closer to
blown up
$150
for a few minutes, and then
out of the local economy that's not being spent in businesses. So this just isn't the homeowner
Takes
who
a second.
has to can't spend that money because he doesn't have it. It's the places where he spends it aren't getting it. And that has its so there's no tax that's free. small shopping centers where people want to get gelato or go to Five Guys, if you don't think taking out $70 million additional dollars out of financially struggling families isn't gonna trickle down to the local businesses, you're mistaken. It's gonna get worse. You can't tax your way into prosperity. And you can't have a budget that's growing faster than the economy, which is what we have. So there has to be an adjustment. So, and this is just common sense 101 economics. There is nothing, that's, like what Rocket said, there's nothing sophisticated about it. You just have to look out in the world. And when you go to the grocery shop, maybe they don't grocery shop, but just see the prices already, only knowing that everyone who's out there in the forecasting business is saying these numbers, 20-25%. They're not saying that to scare people. They're saying it out to investors.
How can the city have a reserve of $5 million for gas when citizens can't even afford to fill up their tank? I mean, what is the lack of common sense, the tone deafness to just put a slush fund in for them when families are struggling?
Well, it just gets back to what I said earlier. I'm not assuming that there's bad people making these decisions. They're obviously listening to somebody they're listening to someone other than people at the debt place. And I think they've misplaced their loyalty to the city as an entity over having their loyalty with the owners of the company, which is the taxpayers. The city's like this thing, and the demand for services is going up. Well, of course, the demand of my kids on my budget goes up, but they don't get their demand met because I don't have the money to meet their demand. So I say, hey, this is what you got. You want something more? Go out and get another job. And so that takes a certain perspective. But you can't turn the city into the client that you're serving. You have to remember first and foremost, your client is the public.
Amen.
Not the
Amen.
city. Now there are times when maybe raising taxes would be necessary because you've done all this leaning out, and you can make the case. There's no case to be made for this budget. I mean, you can make a case, but you
Right.
families shouldn't be having to make additional sacrifices. Now, if our transactional revenues grow, great. You're buying more stuff, and sales tax revenues coming in, then the people who have money to spend, they're spending it. That's a voluntary tax. You don't have to go out and eat at a restaurant. You're gonna have to go out and go to Home Depot, the stock's going up. Nonetheless, but the point being is, those are voluntary expenses to some extent, especially if the tax comes off groceries, which it should. Then, okay, but taxes on wealth have no relationship to the income of the people that own that vehicle or own that home. And that should be going up. It should be tax relief. And then the other answer is because you don't want to make tough choices.
Elaine?
What about the 54.9 million reversion funds for the schools? Can that come back into play and be revisited?
It can be. That sheet came back last year when we ended the budget. There was $81 million of overperformance and underexpended revenue. The school board underexpended, under-executed, meaning they appropriated money but they didn't spend it, was about $14.5 million. There then was another 26.9, I think that's close, $1 million of overperformance revenue, meaning that when we estimated what sales taxes or different things would generate and built our budget on that, the revenues came in higher than that. Well, obviously you can't spend money that wasn't appropriated. And then there was $10.1 million from the state, because I thought the schools should get for them to pass through. But in the end, when you add it all together, it was $54.9 million. And January 18th, the council voted, and I mentioned before I knew I couldn't vote, that wait, releasing the whole budget and know the whole picture before we give that money back. They weren't legally entitled to that money. And they're doing some of the accelerating school construction, AstroTurf fields, you know, just a number of things were in there, and which we could have kept that money, and now guess what? That would half of that would cover the whole $28 million for the bond referendum. There wouldn't be any tax increase for this year. Maybe there would be next year, but we could do all that $28 million with cash.
Who made the decision, the approval authority to give the school the 54?
10 members of city council. I had to abstain. But now that it's part of a larger, the ruling is if you're voting on a singular agency, which the school, the single school vote, that since my wife works for the school, it makes more than 5,000, I had to abstain. Now, it's all part of a big budget. So now it's not a singular vote, it's a consolidated vote. So now I can participate, and I plan to go back and look at that $54.9 million and recoup some of that money, especially since they got $20 million from the state for construction. So we really have to take a hard look, and buildings never made anybody smart that I know of. But the teachers do. And I asked them, why is any of that money going to pay teachers? We got shortfall, we got this, but no, it all went into capital goods and stuff. So anyway, I think there's money to be received there, plus under execution this year, plus overperformance of revenues. Now the manager but we need $70 million of real estate tax, and that's not money in your pocket. That's not giving you money back. That's just saying you don't have to send more money to the city. Same thing with car tax. They're not sending you a check. They're just not going to ask you for as much. So people need to realize that this is just reducing what you have to send, and so that's tax relief. And if we can give $9.5 million a city do in real estate tax abatement, and if we can give $24 million of tax abatement to build a public garage for town for the mall. You can't have two standards. We give away all this money, but we don't have any money. We can't provide you any tax relief. We have all this. We got to keep the city whole and hold us harmless. That was the word they used. And I want to hold families and small businesses harmless. That's what I want to do. So yes, I plan to look at that $54.9 million.
So my question goes back to the AstroTurf issue. Is it possible that by the installation of AstroTurf, you save so much money on paying gardeners and water and is
Injury
it
rate's
any
much
way?
higher. Injury rate on AstroTurf is significantly higher. The pros have gone back to turf if you've seen it. And we've already spent $8 million on AstroTurf fields on other high schools already. I didn't know that, so I started asking questions, and I found out we've already spent. So how can the school system, who said they were running out of money, they couldn't pay for English as a second language, they had a shortfall, so they put AstroTurf ahead of educating children? Oh, you're having a shortfall? How come you're doing it and you're not putting your money towards recruiting bonuses and hiring these people?
I just want to know though, is it in any way possible that the
They're not
AstroTurf
saving money.
saves
No.
money?
Even if it saves money in the long run, when cash is king and you're trying to help people out today, I don't care about tomorrow. I have to survive today. And I'm trying to get families to survive this year. I'll fight next year. But I want to get families to be able to survive today and next year. We are not taking the actions to make that happen. And if you think rents aren't going to keep going up, you're mistaken. You should read the prospectus people send out to investors that people aren't going to be able to buy, and the demand for rental is going up. And they are right now they represent 2% of all the single-family homes are owned by these large firms, and that percentage is rising because they see what the market is in the future, and rents are not expected to come down anytime in the near future. So we've got to be mindful of the real cost of families, not this artificial government CPI thing. That's just how they have to cash out entitlements. It doesn't reflect the real cost of living. Look at your electric bill and see how much is in there for Northern Green Energy on your bill. It's about 6% of your bill is up, just on the basis of paying for all the fuel recovery and the point is, life is, household costs, fixed costs have really gone up, the city doesn't need to add to the payment.
Mr. Moss, it appears as though this city council wants to line their pockets somehow from the wealth of the city, but it's a false narrative because 40% of our student population is on free and reduced lunches. So that's an indicator we're not a wealthy city. On top of that, we have the third highest meal tax, 11.5% in the entire nation. Something is wrong with these equations.
Well, I do not believe that council members are lining their pockets.
I didn't,
I do not believe that.
I mean that
I
your
do
personal
bel-
pockets.
I do believe that they have a philosophy about the role of government that's different from the one I hold. And they believe that these things are gonna pay off in the long run for the city. But my question has always been is, tell me a time when we've gotten a dividend where we said, oh, I'm reducing taxpayers' tax rate and taxes in a negative way, meaning a real tax reduction because of our investments in tourism or investments in energy. What I see happening is it just goes into fueling more city spending.
Amen.
And everybody has a goodie list. Well, I didn't give the city manager any goodie list. You know, my good thing was to, what? Tax relief for residents. Because I think so I just think it's a philosophical view. It's like when the Democrats were in charge in Richmond. You didn't hear any talk about tax rebates. You didn't hear any talk about, changing standard deduction. You didn't hear about, because they want money to spend because then they can say, look what I delivered. Well, my view is, I think the first role of government is to deliver liberty and prosperity. And you deliver liberty and prosperity by making sure first people have money to spend. If you don't have any money to spend, you can't do anything. You're trapped, you're captive, you're like an indentured servant to the government. And prosperity means that people have enough after meeting their choices. They could choose to spend their money, or they could choose, like Donna and Jim did, to pay off their debts, save for their savings, and they didn't expect that in their retirement, that the wealth that they accumulated would be taxed to spend for more government when they thought they were gonna be able to spend that in their golden age on making a trip or doing something paying for their granddaughter's college. But no, we are making it such that people can't save. And we're building an economy around that unless you're in the top 10%, you're just like in the movie The Matrix. You're just a battery being consumed, and when it's all empty, they get a new battery. And that's not the country we want to build. That's not the city we want to build. But that's the path we are on. And it's not. And I applaud Governor Youngkin for his initiative. People should be listening to what they are saying. We have got to reduce the cost of government. We can't do everything every special interest group wants to do. And when we got federal money, bless the heart, we gave most of it out to localities, most of it out to United Way to help people who were on that bottom 20%. And we gave city employees bonuses. Until we did this tax relief, we didn't give any, and that is not paying something, it's not getting cash, it's not paying something. No taxpayer's got a check from the city. So that middle 60%, you just don't have to pay as much. So we just can't have a divided country where everybody's not participating in the sacrifice and the choices. And government can't become an entity unto itself. And it protects itself and insulates itself from the hard choices that families are having to make. And that's what I hear in the emails.